我哋夠鐘亦都夠人啦。
Members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Since the last meeting, we have received 11 information papers. You will find the details under item 1. Ms. Tanya Chan sent us a letter in December on the 7th. She would like to have a discussion about installation of CCTV inside taxis. But when it comes to any recording device, it may touch on privacy. And that is the work of the Constitutional Affairs panel. And I will send a letter to discuss the arrangements with him. I have already notified the chairman of the CAP. So in relation to the joint meeting, you will receive information shortly. Date of the next meeting, it will take place on the 20th of January 2017. You will find the items for discussion on the agenda. Next time we will discuss two items. First is the briefing by the Secretary for Transport and Housing on the Chief Executive's 2017 policy address. The second one is the new franchise for the bus network of the Kowloon Motor Bus Company Limited. Any views on these two items? But these two items will cover a lot of matters. So I would like to start the meeting at 10 o'clock, which is 45 minutes earlier than usual. Any comments? If not, well, I'll ask the Secretariat to make arrangements. Would you please ask the administration to come in and join us? The first item is in relation to increasing the seating capacity of light buses.
出席我哋會議嘅係張炳良局長。
We have Professor Anthony Cheung, Secretary for Transport and Housing, Mrs. Ingrid Yeung, Commissioner for Transport.
住小巴增加座位嘅問。
There are 3 papers in relation to this item. They have already been given to members. I will first ask the official to present the paper before I open the floor for members to express their views. First, Secretary, in June this year, the administration reported to this panel about the work progress on the study of increasing the seating capacity of light buses. At that time, the proposal was that it would be increased to no more than 3 seats. However, we had to engage a consultant to conduct in-depth studies. We're here today to give you a report of the result of the study and implementation details. We propose to increase the seating capacity of light buses from 16 to 19 to increase the seating capacity. When we're conducting the study, we have taken into account demand and supply of public light buses, including green and red ones, and also the ecosystem of different modes of public transport. Study findings shows that by increasing the seating capacity to 19 will greatly alleviate the shortage in supply during peak hours. The leftover passengers will be reduced from 70% to less than 40%. For routes with a waiting time of over 10 minutes, it will be greatly reduced by 80%. Some of the route package suffer a loss, and that will be improved as well. By increasing the seating capacity by 3, then the extent of the loss will be reduced. We have taken into consideration the impact on the increase of seating capacity on other modes of transport. We have a very well-developed public transport system with many different modes of transport. And these modes of transport faced competition of different degrees. So when we consider increasing the seating capacity of public buses, we have to consider the impact on other modes of transport to ensure that the ecosystem of public transport and the individual and functions and roles of individual modes will continue to develop healthily, so that in the end the public will benefit. We have considered all the factors. We think that by increasing the seating capacity to 19 by 3, that is a feasible proposal. There are views saying that some long wheelbase public bus, light bus, can accommodate 20 seats, and they may introduce new models to accommodate bigger seating capacity. When we consider the increase in seating capacity, we will focus mainly on demand supply of public light bus and also the ecosystem of public transport instead of individual layout and model of public light buses. We propose that operators may take into account the operating environment and their fleet before they decide whether to increase the seating capacity to the statutory limit and the timetable. Paragraph 13 of the paper states that operators may follow the current mechanism to apply to the Transport Department to replace their fleet and to arrange for examinations after they've changed the seating layout. We agree that such increase may apply to private light buses because, according to the analysis of the consultant, was that in the past 5 years there has been an increasing demand for private light buses as well, and this trend will continue to increase. We hope we will get support from members. We plan to, in the second quarter of next year, introduce the legislative amendment to the LegCo to amend the road traffic ordinance and also the definition of light bus and bus to implement the proposed increase in seating capacity to 19. We'll continue the trade to adopt measures to improve service quality. We have identified a model that is suitable for the use in Hong Kong, which is a low-floor wheelchair-accessible public light bus model. In the second half of this year, we will introduce it to some hospital routes to gauge whether it is feasible and desirable to use such model. We'll be happy to answer questions. Thank you. Any other motions from members? If you do, please give us your motion so that it will be photocopied to all members. I'll read out some names. Edward Lau, Claudia Mo, Gary Chan, Frankie Yick, Leung Chi Chang, Wilson Orr, Michael Tian, Fernando Zhang, Pun Siu Ping, Wu Chi Wai, Jeremy Tam, Luk Chung Hong, Yu Si Wing, Chung Chung Tai, Alvin Young, and Edward Yiu. This item will take us to 11:30. We may overrun a little bit. And there's also Fernando Zhang as well. Well, I have to receive, I have to deal with a complaint at 11:15. Can I ask my questions first? Dr. Fernando Zhang, you have to leave at 11:15. Any objections if we put him early in the queue? So, yes, that will be the case. And also, Michael Look as well. If there are no other views, then this will be the order. Edward Lau, how much time do I have? 3 minutes. Thank you. The DAB has all along been asking for seating capacity of light buses be increased. This time they have responded to our request by increasing it to 19. We welcome that, of course. We will continue, however, to get the administration to accept our proposal to increase the capacity to 20. In new territories and a lot of rural areas, during the morning and the afternoon peak, we see a long queue waiting for public buses, light buses. There are no alternatives, so these public light buses are the only choice for them. So we hope that by increasing the seating capacity further, the waiting time will be shortened and more people will be able to, ride the light buses. About 1/5, that is 800 PLBs, can accommodate 20 seats. However, because of the statutory requirement, 4 seats have been taken away. If the capacity is increased to 20, then it will increase efficiency and it will not cause unnecessary wastage. The administration may ask, there's only a difference of 1 between 19 and 20. Why do we insist? But by increasing it 1 seat further, it will increase 6% of the capacity, which is an additional 271 additional PLBs.
In the new territories and other areas, we look at the queues. There's really a need to increase the sitting to 20. At the last time when PLB increased the sitting is more than a decade ago. So if we accept the 19 seats this time, I don't know how long we have to wait for it to increase to 20. So I'd like to ask the administration, first, would you accept our proposal to maximize the capacity, to increase the sitting to 20? And also, if you don't accept it, why? When would you have a review? Secretary, as I just said in the opening remark, in increasing the capacity, it's not based on the present or future vehicle type. It's more on the demand for PRBs. We look at the overall demand, not just for a particular route, because after we increase the statutory ceiling, doesn't mean that PLBs would be able to reduce their frequencies. They have to maintain a certain level of frequencies and to make sure that we can have diversified and eco-friendly public transport system. Claudia Mo? You are proposing to increase the ceiling to 20, but it won't be mandatory. The response you got from the sector, would it be that more than 90% of the PLBs would be willing to increase to 20 or 19? And also, you said that you were looking at the supply and demand, but adding 1 more seat, all along we've said, why not make it 20, just 1 more seat? Why do you insist on 19? But you said it yourself, that you want to maintain the eco balance in the transport system. That is, you don't want to offend the buses or car dealers. In Hong Kong, you've seen demonstration. The 20-seat minibuses definitely have room for survival, and yet you want to keep it at 19. Well, you don't need to answer me. My third question is, just you mentioned low floor public light buses, which will be on the street next year, and you consider hospital routes first. How about from Mayfield to Princess Margaret Hospital? Would that be among the routes? Secretary, Commissioner, for the hospital routes, now we are in discussion with 3 big minibus operators on a trial scheme in the depots. They have found low-floor wheelchair accessible PLBs. they will include these models in buses, in routes serving Princess Margaret Hospital and also another hospital in Kowloon. Okay, cover my first question. Is it that more than 90 PLBs will increase the seating to 19? Secretary, as I just said, in our policy consideration, it's not based on the capacity of a particular vehicle type, because logically speaking, some manufacturers can say that they can provide seating for up to 25. I told you it's not a question. You answered me many times before that it's not based on the type of vehicle. So what's your question? Are you confident that more than 90% of the PLBs will increase the seating to 19? Because this is just a proposal, not a mandatory policy. As I said, that will be the statutory ceiling. But for individual routes, the operators will need to consider where they want to increase the seating to the maximum. Do you have the statistics? Do you have figures? More than 90%. Well, Chairman, we haven't approved the ceiling. Well, but you must have discussed with the transport trade. They must have given you opinions. Do you think that after this proposal is approved, how many public light buses will increase their seating? The Transport Department has discussed it with the operators, and on the whole, they support this change. Fernando Zhang? Well, I'm more concerned about the barrier-free transport. All along, PLBs are not wheelchair accessible, particularly for buses serving hospitals. For rehab buses, every year, the number of appointments cancelled number more than 10,000, and of them more than 70% were for consultations, repeat consultations. But many hospitals are on hillsides. Besides public light buses, there are no other means of public transport going there. You can't put electric wheelchairs in a taxi. So I'm very pleased to see that you are going to have wheelchair accessible PLBs. But the routes that I've just heard seems like they are not really urgently needed. Prince of Wales Hospital is on a flat land. I don't know whether the other hospitals covered by the routes are on the flat land. Luckily, Queen Mary Hospital has the lift tower, but the Princess Margaret Hospital's tower is not yet built. Even Caritas Hospital is on a slope. Often wheelchair-bound patients, or at some Sandy Bay, like a Sandy Bay Hospital, and it's very difficult for people in a wheelchair to go up the hill or down the hill outside of a hospital. So you need to reconsider your routes. I don't know also for the hospital areas, would you have the training to or arrange for wheelchair users to inspect the vehicles first and see how easy it is for them to get on board? And also if you found that there could be some adjustments made, that would actually increase the cost of operations. And if that's the case, would you consider providing subsidy? Because otherwise the operators may drop the idea of having wheelchair accessible PLB. So would you try to amend the law to exercise discretion? As for discretion, you are talking about, that is, if we need to provide for low floor wheelchair accessible routes. So even if the vehicle is longer than the statutory limit of 7 meters, then the Commissioner can exercise discretion to allow it to extend the length. Commissioner, for wheelchair accessible low floor PLB pilot scheme, we expect that by 2017 we'll bring in the low floor PLBs for 3 routes, and operators are willing to participate in the pilot scheme. For other operators of other hospital routes, before we have a clear direction, we need to see what those other operators think. But during the pilot scheme, we can approach some wheelchair-bound patients, and we'll discuss with the operators and see whether we can test the effectiveness of the scheme. And then after the pilot scheme, we will be able to know which type of car model or low floor PLB models are more feasible. And with that information, having consideration for the cost will map out the road ahead or the policy ahead? Well, because there are many members who want to speak, we would draw a line here. Otherwise, we won't have time. Look Chung Hong. Thank you, Chairman. Increasing the sitting to 19. I think it's an idea company welcome by patients, and operators will be happy because that means they can make more profits. But an important stakeholder is the frontline drivers. It seems like those working in the front line were not given attention. Our trade union supports the increased sitting to 19 with condition. That is, you have to improve the remunerations for drivers of the PRBs, including giving them a 15-minute rest time, including 30 minutes for lunch, and also 10 minutes of breaks and 2 breaks in total. Whenever a traffic accident happens involving a PRB, the driver himself will be fined the most $300 according to the labor ordinance. But this is a violation of actually labor rights, and you should also remove the more you work, the more pay you get scheme operating in the sector, because that would give drivers an incentive to overwork, and also there could be disputes among drivers for parking spaces or picking up passengers. So you need to look at the operations, the clauses governing operations. So, Secretary, would you promise that you will address those issues? Thank you for your details. I asked the Commissioner to respond, but still, whatever the limit is for the sitting capacity, the drivers, their safety at work and the appropriate remunerations for them, those are things we should not ignore. We shouldn't ignore. Commissioner, the PLB trade has had difficulty in recruiting drivers. I believe that with increased sitting, as our consultants have found out, with increased sitting, about 60% of the PLB routes, which are currently having deficits, that will be reduced to 30% if the sitting is increased. So for the operators, profits-wise, they will get more. And the operators have told us that with more profits, they'll be able to increase remunerations for drivers. So the drivers would benefit. As for their working hours, we have talked to the trade unions and discussed with the sector on new guidelines. I think we have reached a consensus already, so we'll launch these new guidelines very soon. As for the penalty for drivers caught in an accident, there's a clause right now requiring the drivers and operators to, in the employer-employee relationship, there shouldn't be such costs incurred on the driver in the case of an accident. So there shouldn't be. But if that's still the case, we will call on the drivers to report to the Labor Department. If there's any violation of the labor ordinance, we encourage drivers to file reports to us. Next one. Chancellor Ken, on shortening the waiting time for passengers. On that basis, we support the increased sitting capacity. I think it should really increase to 20, because if you have more passengers, then the operators of PLBs should not ask to raise their fees anymore in the coming 2 years, or to raise the fares, and also to improve the quality of service. In the new territories, we always hear from passengers that PLBs do not arrive on time. So maybe the Transport Department can install it in a PLB, an electronic system, letting passengers know when bus is coming, and that will allow the operators to better manage the fleet of buses and to avoid PLBs not arriving on time or going roundabout ways, not according to the scheduled route. So I'm supporting the proposal with conditions. So can the government respond? Can you ask the operators to install the electronic system displaying information about the schedules? Well, Commissioner, on the roads in Hong Kong, often public transport, not just PLBs but buses, sometimes it's not that they miss stops, but they arrive late at the stop. It does happen. It's because of traffic congestion or accidents along the route. It's not that the operators deliberately let that happen. I also understand that, like in the case of buses, we have the real-time display system of when the bus is coming, and that would help passengers plan their journey more effectively and decide what mode of transport to use. But the cost of installing this system is quite high. And the PLB sector are mostly, composed of small operators. But we will relay your proposal to the operators. In terms of making it a mandatory requirement, I don't think we can achieve it in a short time, because for small operators, particularly those in the new territories, they are not covering many routes.
So the capital input to have this system will be huge for them. And for areas where they need a better fleet management, they will employ someone to management. Say, for example, Hang Tao in the North District, they have employed someone to manage the fleet, and the management has improved. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. The administration will have to consider a number of factors. If the bill is introduced, and if operators want to change the layout to 19, of course it's technically feasible. And someone suggested increasing it to 20. So is it feasible to do that? Well, operators will have to invest into it. Will it be a cost for them to increase fares? When it comes to PLB fare increase, we already have an established mechanism. We'll consider the demand, affordability, inflation, etc. By increasing it to 19, some models can accommodate it and some others. But as I said, we will not take that into account, because some models can accommodate 20. What we consider is choices for the public and whether it will be conducive to healthy development of public transport ecosystem. What if some operators say that it is only a proposal to increase it to 19, I will keep my fleet at the sitting capacity of 16, then it will serve no purpose because it is not mandatory. For routes with a lot of with a huge demand, well, the operators may want to ask for a fare increase. The seating capacity increase will be beneficial to remote routes. 19 seats will be the statutory limit. But Mr. Leung's right. For some routes, operators may not want to increase the capacity to 19. We will allow that. But from our discussion with the trade, we found that they welcome the increase in capacity. And the premise is that the headway should not change. And that's our consideration. Mr. Wilson Orr. Thank you. When it comes to missed trips, the government would like to do something, and one of the ways is to increase capacity. I agree with that. During peak period, there is a huge demand for PLBs, especially residential areas on slopes. In Wong Tai Sin and Kwun Tong in Kowloon East, there are some residential estates that are in this position. So I would like the administration to introduce the bill as soon as possible. You said the second quarter of 2017. I think it's too late. We asked the government to do it earlier. And I have two questions. After the implementation of this measure, will the government conduct any review? If they will, when? If not, why not? And the Commissioner said in the second half of 2017, some low platform buses, some low floor wheelchair accessible PLB models will be introduced to hospital routes. I hope that the United Hospital, the Buddhist Hospital and another hospital in Kowloon East will see the introduction of these low floor PLBs. Thank you. Well, I would like to talk about the review first. If we look back, you see that the last change was 1988, when it was increased from 14 to 16. We have to ensure that there are sufficient choices for patrons. Well, we haven't finished the legislative amendment yet, so it will be premature to talk about the review. We will monitor the change in the public transportation environment. We hope that it will be a good one. We will monitor the situation, and I now defer to the Commissioner. We understand that for wheelchair users, if they have to visit hospitals that are on a hill, it will be difficult. We have talked to operators. It's not mandatory, so we need the cooperation of operators to participate in the pilot scheme. We have approached 3 of them. We'll continue to talk to operators to see if more of them are willing to participate. If their routes cover other hospitals, then we would like to try them out. We would like to try as much as possible this new model. Mr. Frankie Yick. The administration said that according to the survey, during peak times, people have to wait longer. Of course, increasing capacity is one of the ways to alleviate the situation. But what is the root of the problem? Problem with recruitment of drivers. So during peak period, passengers will have to wait for longer. Increasing seating capacity will not do anything to difficulty in recruitment of drivers. And you said in your paper that increasing seating capacity may help with the financial condition of operators. In the past 5 years, the overall passenger volume has not increased. With extension of railway services, they will be affected. For the Island South Line, once it's commissioned, the operating environment will be damaged further. There aren't enough drivers, so the overall capacity has reduced. I do think that you have to deal with this problem. Over 60% of the routes of PLBs suffer a loss. That is the reason. So how do they solve the problem of recruitment difficulties? So I think the administration has to seriously look at the setting of fares and also the fare increase mechanism. Do operators receive sufficient income to enable them to pay a better salary? Well, in the past, I've said that drivers of the 3 different colors of buses adds up to 200 years old. Now, the average age is 210. Yes, the average age of PLB drivers is increasing. Different stakeholders have different views. And some members of this panel think that fares should not increase without good reason. Of course, if a better pay is offered, it will be conducive to attracting new drivers. Yes, 60% of the route package suffer a loss. And the interesting thing is that still operators operate these loss-making routes because they make money from other packages. We realize that operators don't just want to make money. They don't just want to make money. They want the operating environment to be stable too. Mr. Michael Tin, the New People Party has done a lot in past few years when it comes to PLBs. We have petitions. We have had meetings. And in the last legislative term, we urged the administration to solve a problem that has not been answered for over a decade. And I'm very glad to hear your answer this time. You have a sense of commitment. You have dealt with something that no one wants to touch in the past 10 years. Yes, I know that it will affect the ecosystem of the trade, but still you have to have a backbone. I know that there are some requirements for newly registered minibuses, say for example half-step and handrail. But safety is an important issue. In recent PLB accidents, it was a complete mess. Most passengers did not wear seat belts. It won't cost much to install seatbelt sensors in new PLBs, because if there is weight on the seat and the seatbelt is not buckled, then it will make a noise. I hope that you will make use of this legislative amendment to mandate installation of sensors of seat belts. Old ones, it will be difficult, but for the new ones, it will be easy. People may swarm to buy new vehicles because of the increase in capacity. You will make them install the sensors. And drivers, if they hear the sensor, then they would have the power to require passengers to buckle up. I have a motion on this issue and I ask members to support it. And I have a question for you, Secretary. Would you consider it? It's a very good point, and I will ask the department to follow up to look into the feasibility. Of course, we will discuss with the trade. For old vehicles, it will be difficult. We aim to strike a balance. But for new ones, this will be an opportunity to install such device. Well, thumbs up for you again, Secretary. Mr. Wan, sorry, I won't be able to accommodate you because I've already drawn a line. Mr. Andrew Wan. Well, I see that there are about 4,350 urban and NT for green buses is 4,350. For red ones, So 3,250. Well, some minibuses will increase the capacity to 19, whereas others will remain at 16, and there may be some that will have 17 or 18 seats. You will see the number of seats on the side of the car, on the body of the car. So how would you deal with overloading? You will introduce the legislative amendment in the second quarter of 2017. Some members ask for 20 seats. So members may not endorse your proposal of 19. They may ask for 20. Would you accept that? We have worked out the maximum limit to be 19. For some routes or some models, they may not accommodate 19. I will defer to the Commissioner for details. We will work very hard to introduce the bill to LegCo in the second quarter of 2017, and we aim to implement it as soon as possible. Commissioner, I see that members are concerned that after the law has changed, some operators may not want to do anything to change. Well, for every year and a half or so, we will conduct a review of operators on their performance. We don't look at their fleet, the model, whether they use new models. We only look at the outcome. If there are always passengers left behind and they have not done anything to resolve that, well, if they want to keep it at 16, they can buy more vehicles. But if they don't do anything, we will score them a low point. A low point may result in a non-renewal of license.
So, I think this happened among some bad performing operators before, and we continue with this policy. Would you like? For the statutory requirement for maximum seating capacity, I think besides the number of seats in each vehicle, there are other limits like on the maximum length of the vehicle, the space in between seats, the corridors width and so forth. So if a PLB that is, if the number of seats, there are some vehicles that actually can accommodate, they are built to accommodate 20 people. They only converted to 19 seating because of the statutory requirement now. So in principle, some buses could be converted to accommodate 20 seats. So, Secretary, why you were talking about ceiling of 20 or 90 here? So shouldn't you let the PLBs adjust the number themselves? And also in your discussion, you talk about ecosystem, eco-balance. So, Secretary, do you mean by eco-balance that there is opposition from other groups? And what is the ground for opposing your idea? I think, Mr. Wu, you've met with many members of the trade. When I talk about the eco-balance in public transport system, well, Claudia Mo just asked me about, concern about large buses. But of course, buses are a stakeholder. There are others as well. Taxis, village buses, and so forth. We want to create a system under which there can be various types of transport modes. So passengers will have various choices. There is competition in between the same transport mode, or there's also competition across various modes. So our view is that to strike a balance, increasing the seating from 16, which dates back to 1988, to 19 is quite an remarkable increase already. But as mentioned in the paper, the statutory length limit of the vehicle is 7 meters. But to promote barrier-free facility and to accommodate, environmental requirements imposed by the EPD, so there could be vehicles whose length is more than 7 meters. I do want you to seriously consider the possibility of having a 20 seating capacity. Okay. Lam Chatting, the biggest regret in life is when you are waiting in the queue, you found that you were the last one who couldn't get on the bus. The Democratic Party, of course, welcomes the government's proposal to increase the sitting capacity tonight. Well, you're suggesting increasing it to 19, but we think that why not make it 20? To avoid more people having the biggest regret in their lives. As a district councillor in the Northern District, there is a minibus stop in my constituency. I often see residents during peak hours. They are stuck in a queue that extends to, actually from an alley to the main street. During peak periods, the PLBs cannot really take on all the passengers waiting. Don't underestimate the one extra seat, particularly for people going to rural areas, where the frequency of services of PLB isn't that high. You are talking about waiting for a long time if there's one less seat on the bus. So, Secretary, you really should consider increasing this capacity to 20. I also urge my other fellow colleagues to support my motion to increase the sitting to 20. Secretary? Maybe I've kept repeating myself, but the statutory proposal of increasing the sitting to 19 actually came out of thorough considerations of various factors. But if there are lots of passengers, in the long queues, I think the ultimate solution is not so much to increase the sitting capacity, but to increase the frequency of service. Chairman, I understand you want to strike a balance, balance the interests of taxis, buses, and so forth. But I think that the PLB trade is having difficulty now, particularly now they have drivers, who's really underpaid. If you can increase the seating capacity so they can make more money, that would help enhance the overall quality of PLB service. I understand, Mr. Lam, your point, but let me repeat myself. We've considered a number of factors, and the sector also has its own views. They know that they're faced with competition from other modes of transport, so we need to strike a balance. I heard two views, members, but right now we think that a more appropriate approach is to keep it at 19. Well, next room there is a vote to be taken on, so we'll have to adjourn for 10 minutes. When we come back, the first member to speak will be Jeremy Tam.